Pakistan and of course the terror attacks that emanated from Pakistan. And the other aspect is Bangladesh. So we'll come to Bangladesh in a bit, but first, top intelligence sources have told us that the extradition is more than just bringing someone back to Bharat, and it will impact Pakistan's ISI, Lashkar and Jaish directly. Sources have further said that after Tahawwur Rana's extradition, Bharat is hopeful of carrying out a joint operation on terror locations in Pakistan along with the USA. Sources have also said that Rana's extradition is significant in terms of the fight against terror. The FBI has already told agencies everything about his role in the 26/11 Mumbai attacks. While the NIA teams had questioned him earlier, it is important that he will now be brought to Bharat. This shows India's growing leadership, stature at the global level, and also more importantly, our leadership in the fight against terror and terrorism. Rana's extradition also highlights the strong partnership between US and India in counter-terrorism efforts. And according to sources, Tahawwur Rana's extradition to our country will send several significant messages across the world. First, it's become clear that the world is committed to act against terrorism and Bharat is a major partner. This step also shows that terrorists and their facilitators will not find safe havens in other nations, including the USA, where human rights are top priority. And there's more. Are we now looking at more extraditions? Is Tahawwur Rana the first of many? President Donald Trump actually hinted, saying that there is a long list of people, sequence of people who have committed crime against Bharat, and we will work on that. We will work on it with India. Bharat is set to hand over a list of fugitives to the United States of America. In fact, that list has been handed over already. Top intelligence sources telling CNN News 18, gangsters sitting in America are working at the behest of Pakistan's ISI and are carrying out terror activities. These gangsters have been giving instructions sitting in the US, and killings and murders are being carried out on their behalf. Now, sources have added that they are a threat to Bharat's sovereignty. And according to sources, gangsters like Goldi Barar have been carrying out all kinds of activities, from killing to drugs to smuggling to extortion, trafficking on behalf of the ISI. Goldi Barar allegedly orchestrated the assassination of Punjabi singer Sidhu Moosewala in May 2022. Another request that Bharat has already put forth is that for Dharmanjot Singh Kahlon. Now, Dharmanjot Singh Kahlon is a weapons supplier and played a crucial role in planning Moosewala's murder. Kahlon is suspected of smuggling weapons, explosives and heroin into our country from Pakistan. Another criminal that India is looking for is Anmol Bishnoi, who is working for the Babar Khalsa International, or the BKI, sources have told CNN News 18. He is wanted for allegedly orchestrating the murder conspiracy of NCP leader and former Maharashtra Minister Baba Siddique. Let's go across to our guests. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Senior Fellow IPCS. We should have Dr. Joseph M. Jalil joining us in a bit from Washington, D.C. Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow ORF with us. Glenn Carl, former CIA officer, joining us from Boston in the U.S. And Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar joining us. So thank you very much. Namaste to everybody, gentlemen. My first question, Sushant Sareen, how significant is Tahawwur Rana and also the comments, Tahawwur Rana's extradition and the comments made by President Donald Trump with respect to Pakistan?
Look, with respect to Pakistan, the comments that have been made are, in a sense, boilerplate, because those are comments which have come in the past as well. The real question is going to be how much will the Americans really turn the screws on the Pakistanis. I think there's not going to be a whole lot of patience in the US with Pakistan and its flirtation or its actual active involvement in terrorism, Islamist terror groups. But other than that, there will be areas on which India and the US can, do intelligence sharing, cooperate, work together. But on Tahawwur Rana himself, I think it's an important decision which has taken place from the American side. If they're going to, if he's going to get extradited to India, then I think there will be a lot of information that India will be able to extract out of him. Now, of course, let's keep in mind one fact, that he has been in jail for the last 15 odd years, 16 years. So a lot of the information which he has is dated. Things have moved on since the time he has been arrested. We need to be clear on that count. But insofar as how some of the main characters involved, some of them might have reached senior positions in the Pakistani military hierarchy. Perhaps we can identify them, we can also get a clearer idea of how these networks operate, not only inside Pakistan but also internationally.
Right.
After all, he was an important linchpin of this entire terror networks that the Pakistanis have in the US, in Canada, in Australia, in the UK, in many of the European countries, Germany for one, and a couple of other countries in Europe. So they use the ISI guys use some of these members of the Pakistani diaspora to actually then browbeat, to intimidate people within the Pakistani diaspora to carry out criminal activity, to carry out spying on their behalf. So a lot of those things will be able to be extracted from him. But I think we need to be mindful of the fact that, look, 16 years in the clangor, the man has, a lot of the information he's going to shuck up is going to be quite dated in many ways.
So you believe it's not a big deal, but the Biden administration, I'm saying that it's not as useful as it would have been had he been handed over about 3-4 years soon after the incident happened, or when he was nabbed, or soon after that had that happened. But Glenn Carl, President Trump also said that the Biden administration did not treat India well. And he's also somewhere hinted at how the intelligence agencies, the mechanism was used to try and play a double game. So shake hand on the one side and use the deep state on the other to try and keep things difficult or make things difficult for India. Would you agree with this? Or do you see a clear shift between Joe Biden and President Trump, or Trump 2.0?
Well, I agree with almost none of that, actually. Most anything that Donald Trump says is circumstantial and only defined and relevant for the moment. He's sort of intellectually like a potato chip, something that tastes seemingly good at that instant, but actually has no nutritional value or substance to it. I can tell you that the counterterrorism cooperation among most states, and more relevant in this instance, is, let's say, between the United States and Pakistan, the United States and India, who India and Pakistan are not the closest of friends. Nonetheless, the coordination on terrorism issues has been deep for decades. I know this firsthand. Now, extraditing people is a nice political gesture and may have, as the gentleman speaking before, some substantive value for India, although I would doubt it, because, one, a lot of these people have been detained for a long time, and so what they have would be historically relevant and possibly useful, but not operationally useful, probably. And two, because even during tense relations diplomatically, but say between India and the United States, and they haven't been especially tense, but let's posit that they were tense. Nonetheless, counterterrorism cooperation among the intelligence agencies is real. And I would be shocked were Indian intelligence officers and diplomats had not been able to have access to the detainees, the prisoners, or the arrested people in the United States periodically. So it's a nice diplomatic gesture, and it shows that the U.S. and India want to make nice to each other. But beyond that, I don't think that it is a profound shift in cooperation or substantive advantage for India.
Dr. Chalil, do you agree with Glenn or differ with him?
I would beg to differ. Again, reason being, I've known. Again, I had the privilege of working with the President Biden a little bit, and unfortunately, I don't think he was in charge of what is happening. Even some of the meetings where I went to, were supposed to be attended by Vice President Kamala Harris, were chaired by the second gentleman. So the administration has moved away from the president and the vice president to many of the Obama appointees and the so-called deep state. I'm not sure whom you want to call that, but either way, I'm not sure the cooperation was there. The courts approved this extradition, years ago, or why wasn't it done? So this is a political win for India. Again, would the actionable intelligence come from this or not? That's a different question. But it's a deterrent for future. But I'm very optimistic about future extraditions, future collaborations, especially on the Sikh for Justice point of view. and for the people who are hurting Indian diplomats in the USA and people who are threatening American, Indian flights and things like that.
There is a thought process which says that a lot of the drug trafficking, human trafficking, and this entire business, heroin especially, emerges from Pakistan, and there is a role that the illegals and also these gangsters and criminals, especially those who are raising the K bogey, have in ferrying the fentanyl also from Mexico all the way to Canada and back into the US, and it's this logistical trade that earns them the money. So if this crackdown is complete, as we see what's happening at the borders in Mexico and in Canada, and if there is some seriousness, these people will also be clipped. Their wings or their monies will be clipped. The moment their monies are clipped, they won't be able to act like they are. Plus the perhaps so-called tacit, claimed, unclaimed, not confirmed support that they got from federal agencies and some entities, Ambassador Sajanhar. Perhaps that will also now stop under this disposition. Can we be hopeful of that? And would you be encouraged if there are some serious counterterrorism operations, joint Indo-US ones, where US provides the intelligence, we do the action, and we do some cleanup, some pest control along our LOC and borders?
Yeah, thank you very much, Anand. I think, yes, that there is definitely a possibility of that. I think first coming to the points that were made by the earlier two speakers, that, it's nice to do it diplomatically. I don't think it was only a diplomatic sort of an action, because this whole thing went through the legal processes in the United States. And basically, I doubt it very much that if last month, I think in January, it was the Supreme Court which said that Tahawwur Rana, he had exhausted all possibilities of appeal, and so his extradition to India was approved. So if we had not got the legal nod from the Supreme Court that the president or any of the diplomatic functionaries, however high they would have been able to give the nod and the green signal that we have decided. But of course, it makes for good optics, it makes for good image when at the highest level. Anand, you would recall that in 2017 also, when Prime Minister Modi had gone for his first visit to the United States after Mr. Trump had taken over, and I think it was in July, at that time also it was one of those terrorists, Salahuddin, Sayyid Salahuddin, I think, who was designated as a terrorist, and with equal fanfare, President Trump had declared at that time that we have decided to designate him as an international terrorist. And then I think he was taken over also on the 1267 committee of the UN Security Council. So I think this is basically a demonstration of the fact that India and the United States are on the same page as far as dealing with counter-terror is concerned. And you would recall, that the names of all these, whether it is ISI, Daesh, and Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar, they are mentioned in the joint declaration also. And Prime Minister Modi, in his own comments, he spoke not only about counter-terrorism, in a vacuum, but cross-border terrorism, thereby very significantly pinpointing, the finger at Pakistan, that it continues to be a source of terror as far as India is concerned. Just taking, Mr. Trump has always been, against terrorism and against Pakistan. You would also recall, his famous tweet of 1st January 2018, when he had commented that, that was the first tweet of that new year, after his first year in office, when he said that we have been giving $33 billion of, this terrorist, security to deal with terrorists, all this security fund to Pakistan to bring terrorists, to arrest terrorists and bring them to us. And it is providing a haven to the same terrorists that are wanted by us. And this will not continue. So I think of course, he changed it when he wanted Imran Khan's help to reach out to the Taliban. That's another story. But that, need does not exist at the moment. So what I feel is that the collaboration between the United States and India on the issue of counterterrorism is going to be strong and it is going to be visible.
Yeah.
Coming to the point, just
Ji.
one more comment, coming to the point that you mentioned, about the support to the federal agencies. And I think this has been evident, this has been palpable. Now, whatever you say, whether Mr. Biden was in full control or that is the way the so-called deep state, with its intelligence agencies and all, they operate in the United States. But Minik, it is quite inconceivable. I think in India, we were able to notice it. I don't know whether it had the same, reverberations in the United States. That Prime Minister Modi is visiting the White House in June 2023, about on the 20th of June. And just a week before that, a delegation of the Khalistanis is invited to the White House. And it is, that information is brought out openly. That, they had a meeting there and they said that their concerns and their safety and their security will be safeguarded by the American state. So the point I want to make here is that Mr. Trump is going hammer and tongs against the deep state, the so-called deep state.
Right.
Whether
the deep state or they are not going to, he's not going to allow American soil or this entire game where you look down upon foreign interference but openly indulge in it. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, thank you for your patience. Your thoughts?
This so-called, I think the ambassador summed it up well when he said so-called deep state. I don't believe in a deep state. Certainly not, this sort of Pinky and the Brain kind of, I don't know if you watch the Pinky and the Brain cartoon, but it's about this, the brain wanting to take over the world. That doesn't exist in America, right? You can have a lot of, concurrent interests that come together every now and then. But it is important to, if we can play on the sort of fixations of President Trump to our own advantage, just as it is the job of every Indian Prime Minister to use the political situation in America to gain an advantage for India. Specifically in this case, there is a sequence of things that has happened in that joint statement. Pakistan has been named very specifically. You've had a lot of talk of illegal immigration, and we know there's a huge Bangladeshi illegal immigration problem in India.
Right.
And the third one has very specifically targeted drug and human smugglers. Now, the entire drug business in Canada, as you know, especially the fentanyl, is run, there is a huge overlap with Khalistani networks out there, as is the human smuggling network, which is run completely out of Punjab. Now, you add that with Tahawwur Rana. Now, remember, Tahawwur Rana's extradition was approved, like the ambassador said, by the Supreme Court on the 21st of January, literally one day after Trump was sworn in and before he had much time to make any of major changes and like that. But remember, this was the same America which under Obama refused to extradite. Rana is only conspirator number 2. Headley is conspirator number 1. And we only had access to interrogate him under chaperoned conditions, etc., etc. He would not be extradited. So clearly, Biden had taken a decision to extradite, or at least facilitate in some form or the other, the extradition of this man to India, number 1. We don't know what the changing dynamics were. But when you add it to all the other points in the joint statement, there is a very clear message being sent to Pakistan, both by the Democrats and the Republicans, that Pakistan has outlived its, its welcome in America. It is no longer an ally. It is basically, it's the kind of arsonist who also joins the fire brigade and then sets off to get a fire bonus kind of thing. It's a good thing because the confidence of the sort of Pakistani infiltration into America through several bodies, CAIR, for example, the Indian American Muslim Council, which we know has paid Pakistani lobbyists on it, etc., etc. In this particular administration is going to be, it's going to shake them up very, very significantly. They are going to be on the back foot after this because, there is an unsaid rule that generally if you're seen as an ally, and Rana was a serving member of the Pakistan military, you don't really extradite them to an enemy country, so to say, right? That's been broken. And it's important to point out it was broken under Biden. I mean, I'm very happy for Trump to take credit. I will not deny Trump his credit for it. Why? Because I'm not an American. Indian interests matter to me. The Americans can keep their politics to themselves.
Fair point, mate. The aspect is, along with giving them a shakeout, if they can dry their coffers because they're sitting on huge amounts of money. And also those entities, suppose some of these big corporate entities, the wealthy, who are actually using this money and actually funding, working with the US government as well as it's alleged via US aid and otherwise, to try and destabilize economies and entities, to try and further certain perceived strategic American interests. I think that's going to be another case. Let's talk about that in the neighborhood itself. Let's move to Bangladesh. Now, according to government sources, American President Donald Trump's rejection of United States' role in Bangladesh crisis and statement that he would leave it to the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is also a major diplomatic victory. This is what President Trump said. Listen in.
And Mr. President, what you would like to say about the Bangladesh issue, because we saw and it is evident that how the deep state of United States was involved in regime change during the Biden administration. Then Muhammad Yunus made Junior Soros also. So what is your point of view about the Bangladesh?
This is something that the Prime Minister has been working on for a long time and has been worked on for hundreds of years, frankly. I've been reading about it. But I will leave Bangladesh to the Prime Minister.
So Trump saying our deep state is not involved. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been working on it, so we'll leave it to the Prime Minister. So he's actually deflected the ball and then rolled it over across to India. Now, government sources have said that by leaving Bangladesh's internal matters to India, the US wants to ensure Bharat's leadership in ensuring peace and stability in South Asia, in this region. Government sources also said that they would like to read this, that from the beginning, China's role was worrisome in Bangladesh, and possibly the Americans were also upset because of that. China is increasing its presence in Bangladesh along with infrastructure projects and economic investments. The Trump administration also realizes the Chinese footprint is dangerous in Bangladesh. To control Chinese expansionism, Bharat's help is a must in this region. Government sources have also said that the US's formal support of Bharat's role in Bangladesh will reduce the scope for China to put pressure through the Belt and Road Initiative or BRI and defense agreements. Now, this new role will also help Bharat to handle security concerns from Rohingya refugees, border issues, radicalization, and other Islamic terror outfits who are fast mushrooming and trying to gather speed in Bangladesh at the moment. Let's go back to our panelists, and we're going to start with Abhijit Iyer Mitra this time around. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, by saying that we leave it to the Prime Minister, have they said we've created a mess, now you go sort it out? Is that what they're saying? Or are the Americans saying you backed one entity, that means Bharat, that person was engaging with the Chinese, so we've removed that one entity, now sort this out? You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, no, I don't think that's what he meant. If USA didn't do what it was doing, I suspect they should be charged for treason. I fundamentally believe in chaos theories, and I believe every country should be trying to destabilize every other country, or at least gain advantages, right? I think the mistake USA made out here was dabbling in American politics, which got it the kind of pushback that it has from Trump. Now, in Bangladesh, I think what has happened is, Trump will continue in some aspects to influence Bangladesh, as America always will, every country should. But I think the political interests of India in Bangladesh and the domestic political interests of Trump vis-a-vis the Democrats are perfectly aligned at the moment. Muhammad Yunus is the classic case of a bureaucrat who is unelected, who's been foisted on, who's refusing to hold elections. And when he holds elections, he has barred the Awami League. I mean, if you're holding elections, then at least if you're absolutely convinced that Sheikh Hasina was this tyrannical dictator, why would you ban her from elections, right? But he is. I think we're going to see a much, much closer alignment of the kind of lockstep kind of agreement that you're going to see between Trump and India in Bangladesh. He's not outsourced it to us, but because they brought up illegal immigration, it is logical to conclude that they had a very in-depth conversation. this. And here, the Democrats and Republicans are poles apart. The Democrats emphasize the economic benefits of illegal immigrants coming in and the jobs that they do, which Americans don't want to take, which contribute to the American economy. The Republicans tend to focus on the crime and all the illegal networks that set up. And illegality is fungible. A human smuggling network will be used for drug smuggling, weapon smuggling, and things like that. For
Right.
India, it's a very, very big problem.
Right.
Smuggling across the Bangladesh border, we know, has actually been a big factor in a whole bunch of illegality happening around here.
Right.
So it's one of those things where there is kind of this political conjoining which would help you negotiate this particular situation better. But Trump taking a back seat and handing it over he was handing over the question in that particular case to Modi. I think he
Not
was
the issue of Bangladesh itself.
Bangladesh to India. No.
No, not the issue that you sort out this matter and I leave it to you to sort this out. Dr. Chalil, your interpretation of this response and what does that mean? Then can India now strategically say that we are going to sort out our issues with illegals and with Bangladesh and whatever it is foisting here without any American interference?
I would agree with that President Trump wasn't giving responsibility of Bangladesh to India. I think what we knew before was that maybe 10, 12 years ago there were money invested in Bangladesh by George Soros and the team and the Open Society, especially into the universities, giving grants, giving scholarships to Rohingyas. So they've started developing these ready for this regime change 10 years ago. The role of USAID was recently being released after we just found out after what Elon Musk did. So one thing we should also know that as Elon Musk and George Soros doesn't get along very well, they have very big animosity between each other. And now since George Soros's son, Alex Soros, who was married to Uma Abedin, the former chief of staff for Hillary Clinton, they have an affinity to the Islamic world, to the Rohingyas. So that will be shut down. So that will be peace for India because there'll be less foreign interference in Bangladesh. And I'm hoping that whatever strategy, together with the US, India can put together towards peace and stability of Bangladesh, US will go by it. I'm not sure it was outsourcing the Bangladesh to India.
Ambassador Sajanhar?
Yeah, Anand, maybe I will not use the word outsourcing, but the US policy in the past traditionally has been that when dealing with India's neighbors, it would be India which will take the lead. And the United States will follow the lead that is provided by India. Whether it is in terms of relations with Nepal, with Bangladesh, and with the other countries. Of course, down the road, this has started changing a little bit. But I saw during, my several visits over the last few years to Bangladesh that the Americans were determined to remove Sheikh Hasina. Meaning the US ambassador in Bangladesh was patently, outrightly, that, this government is fascist, this government is dictatorial, and Sheikh Hasina has to go, needs to go. And that is why you would see that even in that Congress of Democracies, that President Biden had organized, Bangladesh was not invited there.
Right.
So, there has been, as far as Mr. Biden is concerned, there has been that problem. You look at the body language when Muhammad Yunus goes to the United States and, the manner in which he is being hugged and embraced by Biden, by Barack Obama, how, Muhammad Yunus had given grant and support to the Obamas, to, whatever the charity foundations, etc. So there has been,
Excuse me.
God bless.
Sorry.
God bless. There has been a very close nexus between the Democrats and Muhammad Yunus. And, of course, Sheikh Hasina said that it was as a result of that St. Martin's Island that the United States wanted and Bangladesh did not give. So I think the United States definitely did have some sort of a role. How much, we can debate it. And whether it is only moral support, political support, financial support, what type of support, we can debate it. But I think the last point that I'd like to make here, Anand, is that what Mr. Trump said, that the deep state had nothing to do with it. In my view, have a look at it again and play it out again and listen to it. What he implied was that basically the deep state had no business to be operational in Bangladesh. They should not have been there. And now that it is he has been against deep state or whatever, and now it is
Right.
India can try to deal with it, and we will work together in handling this. So not outsourcing it, but working together.
Working together and say, okay, you take the lead there and I'll help you out. We're not going to get directly involved. Glenn Carl, your thoughts? Because that St. Martin Island, or was it purely because somewhere India did not realize that Sheikh Hasina was far too gone in bed with the Chinese, and that was going to be a strategic disadvantage for America, and there was a larger game at play. So they didn't care what happened in the region as long as American interests were protected. What's your thought here?
Well, in general, the U.S., like all states, really doesn't really care what happens, except to the extent that an event or a trend affects the U.S. or other countries' national interests. I mean, that's really just an observation of reality for international relations. I'd like to say that it's a simple joy to listen to Mr. Mitra speak. Now, a cynic would say that's because he and I agree entirely, but I think his analyses are very, very good. Several points that I think are important. The comments about deep state that are woven into the questions asked by the journalists, and the assumptions by many about how the U.S. functions and other states function is profoundly dangerous. Deep state is a fascist concept that was discredited after a world war that killed 80 million people. There is no deep state. There are bureaucracies that imperfectly attempt to carry out the decisions by the executive in the U.S. in a still largely democratic system. So that's an important point. It's not splitting hairs in a graduate school seminar. There is no deep state. And that leads us to USAID and the criticisms of USAID undermining various American policies because it's just deep state action. That's worse than nonsense. That's insidious and dangerous. It is not true. What happens is that the USAID does promote, in addition to economic development and social development, broadly speaking, democratic norms or practices, trying to inculcate that. Now, a lot of authoritarian leaders don't like that because that they view undermines and challenges their power. That's what USAID has done. It is not an arm of the deep state, and it is certainly not a branch or an agent or a tool of the U.S. intelligence agencies. Absolutely not.
Okay.
Anyone in the CIA who associates with AID people will be fired. It does not happen. It is illegal. Now, with regard to Bangladesh, it's important to understand that the U.S. doesn't care, except that what China is up to. And so it was an easy for Trump to have, because one, he knows essentially nothing and doesn't care anything about Bangladesh.
Right.
And it's not a vital interest right now, except with regard to what China is up to. So to defer to the Prime Minister and to India is easy, because it passes off something he doesn't know about, and that at present the U.S. doesn't especially care about. That's what's happening there. But this deep state point is fundamental. It's vital that we stop everywhere, in particular in India and now progressively in the United States, accepting that there is such a phenomenon. There is not.
Okay, there are many who would disagree with you. There are many who would agree with you, Glenn Carl. So we need to have a separate conversation on this, and I'm going to call you in advance and say that we need to have this. So Dr. Chalil, I'm sure, Sushant Sareen, I'm sure we want to jump in there, and we'll have a good engaging conversation. But I'm running out of time, so Sushant Sareen, finally to you. You know, is somewhere Bharat in this entire scheme of things with Bangladesh guilty of what our scriptures talk about, Sarpa Drishti and Garud Drishti? That means snake vision and eagle vision. Eagle vision is you have far-sightedness. Snake vision is short-sightedness. Are we in this mess, and are we seeing this all around? Because we have perhaps been a little short-sighted with respect to Bangladesh.
I think Anand, some of it is of our own making. Frankly speaking, we all know that Bangladesh is very important for India, very important for India's security, just as India is for Bangladesh, incidentally. Bangladeshi yahoos seem to forget that India surrounds them on three sides, and there is sea on the other side, and one small outlet for them to go into Myanmar, if that's where they want to go, which I don't think they want to. Number two, I think it's important to clarify this whole business that Sheikh Hasina was leaning too much in favor of the Chinese. I think it's bunkum. Had relationship with the Chinese. The Chinese were coming and investing in this thing. But look, like any leader would do, she was trying to balance various contending players.
Right.
There was nothing really overtly hostile against India which was happening. Even covertly, nothing really major happening. If something was happening, it was also partly our fault. And finally, I think, Anand, it's important to realize, as Ambassador Sajjanar is saying, that, the Americans had this policy that, okay, fine, India's neighborhood is India can take the lead and we will follow India's lead. But has India taken the lead? And how have we taken the lead? So I think that is a question we need to ask ourselves. It's very easy to talk about the American deep state, USA. Yeah, they must have done all what the Americans are infamous for doing, their dirty trick department and all of that. Yes, let me accept that all of that has happened. But when you say that India needs to deal with Bangladesh, what do you mean by it? When you say that we have to deal with Bangladesh, what exactly are we talking about? What are the instruments we have? What are the tools we will use? What are the leverages we will exercise? How are we going to play this game? Do we have our assets on the ground who will be able to ensure that no government in Bangladesh can do things? Bangladeshis are free to have whatever government they want, but nobody who comes to power in Bangladesh can dare to do something which hurts India's interest. Can we do it in Nepal? Can we do it, goddamn it, in the Maldives?
But
or are we saying that, okay, fine, one fine day, the people in Maldives will realize that India is a benign player, so they will come and they will talk to us. The same thing will happen in Bangladesh one fine day. Is that our foreign policy? Is that our security policy in the neighborhood? Is that what we call neighborhood first?
Let's hope.
Because if that's what it is, then boss, seriously,
let's hope that there is a serious rethink and revisit, that there is no harm that we will do in terms of quote unquote foreign interference.
We should be doing
harm. But we will ensure that there is no harm that is done by these entities. I'm just saying from a perspective of regional stability and our protecting our own interests, we will not destabilize other nations, but we will not allow them to destabilize us or the security in this region is a starting point. Now I know there are yes. I have to.
Okay, so I think the fundamental problem in our foreign policy is that we want to be liked in the neighborhood. I think it should change from like to be feared in the neighborhood.
Point
that,
taken.
Look, if you cross their path, then there is going to be hell to pay.
Point well taken, and that also merits another longer conversation, and we will do that very, very soon. For the moment, have to wind up. Thank you very, very much. Engaging as always. Lovely to have all of you on the show here on The Right Time. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're in conversation with the global chair of the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi Foundation.